You wouldn't believe how one decision from the stewards turned Yuki Tsunada's entire weekend upside down. During the final free practice session of the Montreal Grand Prix, something happened that left not just fans, but even the paddock stunned. Yuki received a 10-place grid penalty for what many considered a reasonable move, overtaking Oscar Piastri's damaged McLaren. But here's the twist. It happened under a red flag. On paper, that's clearly against the rules. But when you look at the situation closely, things aren't that black and white. Let's walk through what actually took place. Piastri was limping around the track with a damaged tire, not just a minor puncture, but one that made his car barely move at racing speed. Yuki was behind him, stuck, and had two options: stay behind a dangerously slow car and risk damage, or move past to protect his own car and safety. He chose the latter, a choice that now sits at the center of one of the most controversial penalties this season. Now the real issue people are pointing to isn't whether overtaking under a red flag is illegal. That's already known. The real question is consistency. Last year, during a similar situation, Sergio Perez drove an unstable car back to the pits with a broken rear wing. His punishment, a 3-place grid drop, far less harsh. So why the huge difference this time? Christian Horner, Red Bull's team principal, was clearly frustrated. He called the decision unfair, even suggesting it ruined Yuki's race before it could even begin. According to him, Yuki was just trying to stay safe and avoid damage, while others went unpunished for far riskier moves even after the race had ended. It's not just Red Bull crying foul. Across the F1 community, questions are being raised about how penalties are being handed out. Yuki's decision wasn't made out of impatience, it was made out of necessity. Imagine being stuck behind a car that's crawling, leaving chunks of rubber or maybe even debris on the racing line. That's exactly what Yuki faced. Piastri's McLaren was limping, the tire looked like it could come off at any moment, and Yuki had to react quickly. According to him, he looked ahead, checked his surroundings, and made sure no one was dangerously close before carefully going around Piastri at a controlled pace, 170 km per hour, which is significantly slower than standard speeds at that section of the track. From Yuki's point of view, it wasn't about gaining an advantage, it was about avoiding a hazard. He didn't make a reckless move. He even explained that his biggest concern was getting hit by flying rubber, or worse, getting caught in a sudden stop if Piastri's car stalled. If that had happened, not only would he have risked damage, but he could have also been reached by another driver. So was it really a violation, or was it quick thinking in a high-pressure moment? The frustrating part for Yuki and his team is that his explanations seemed to fall on deaf ears. The 10-place penalty meant he would start near the back of the grid, alongside other drivers who had car changes under park firm rules. It was a massive blow, especially because he had shown strong pace and could have easily fought for points. Christian Horner voiced what many were already thinking, that this sort of punishment felt over the top. He believed that had Yuki been allowed to start from his original qualifying position, we would have likely seen him finish in the points. And in a season where every point matters, losing that opportunity because of what seems like an inflexible rule has bigger consequences than just one race start. As the race weekend moved forward, the focus gradually shifted from just Yuki's penalty to a broader issue: how inconsistent things have become when it comes to on-track rules. What really annoyed teams and fans alike was how other incidents, some even more questionable, went completely unpunished. For example, after Sunday's race, there was a clear case of multiple drivers overtaking while the safety car was still active. That usually calls for penalties, but this time, no action was taken. I himself was hoping that if the stewards were going to be strict, then everyone should face the same consequences. Had the other drivers received the expected penalties, Yuki might have climbed as high as P5 in the final results. But that didn't happen. And that's where the frustration lies: lack of fairness. The rules are supposed to be clear. Either you enforce them for everyone, or you don't. But what happened in Montreal gave the impression that some rules are being applied based on the moment, not the actual incident. And that inconsistency hits hard, especially when it alters the outcome of someone's entire race weekend. The belief, within Yuki's camp and even beyond, is simple. If a car on the track is clearly damaged and unable to maintain even minimum safe speeds, then the responsibility shouldn't fall only on the driver behind. Piastri's McLaren was barely staying together, and while it was technically still running, it was clearly a safety concern. Yuki made a call to protect himself and his car. He didn't ignore the rules, he adapted to the situation, and yet, the result was the harshest punishment he's faced all season. That's the part that stings the most, because no matter how well you prepare, a penalty like that can take you out of contention before the lights even go out. Now, let's take a moment to really think about the situation Yuki was in. He was stuck behind a car that had no business being on the racing line. Piastri's tire wasn't just flat, it was unstable, wobbling side to side, and looked like it could fall off at any moment. That's not just inconvenient, that's dangerous. Yuki made a calculated move. He pulled far to the right, then scanned the track ahead and behind to make sure he wasn't cutting anyone off. He moved across cleanly, at a controlled speed, not to gain an edge, but to get clear of a car that could have caused real trouble. In his own words, Yuki explained that he was trying to stay safe. He was running about half the normal racing speed and still got penalized. From his perspective, it felt unfair, almost as if he was being punished for making the safe choice. And the 10th-place drop didn't just cost him a better start, it essentially wiped out all the hard work. From qualifying, because of the penalty, Yuki dropped out in Q2 and was forced to start near the back. With others like Lawson and Gasly also taking penalties for car changes, it felt like the lower half of the grid was reshuffled more by paperwork than by lap times. But in Yuki's case, the frustration was different. His wasn't a technical issue or a strategic mistake, it was a judgment call made in a moment where the risk of doing nothing was just too high. Christian Horner made it clear. If Yuki had started from where he qualified, points would have been within reach. That's not speculation. It's based on the pace he showed during practice and how hard overtaking is on that circuit. Instead, a moment of smart thinking under pressure turned into a costly penalty, and the race was all but over before it truly began. While the spotlight has mostly stayed on Yuki, the bigger issue that's emerged from this whole situation is the way Formula One's rule enforcement feels unpredictable. One weekend, a driver gets a heavy penalty for reacting to a risky situation. The next, others break similar rules and walk away untouched. That's what people inside the paddock and fans watching from around the world are finding hard to accept. That inconsistency from the stewards and the governing body has created a climate where drivers aren't sure what to expect anymore. And in a sport where decisions are made in a fraction of a second, that kind of uncertainty can be devastating. Rules are important. Everyone agrees on that. But rules only work when they're applied with fairness the same way. Every time. To every driver. Yuk, I did what he thought was best. He avoided a car that posed a danger. He stayed alert, stayed safe, and avoided making things worse. Yet, that decision was punished, not reviewed with understanding, but judged by the letter of the rulebook, not the reality on the track. And while he's taken the hit quietly, there's a clear sense of injustice that lingers. Now, the pressure is building, with Red Bull eyeing young talent like Isaac Hadjar in 2026 shaping up to be a major reset. Yuki knows what's at stake. He's been showing progress, even adapting his setup style to fit his driving needs better. But in F1, progress isn't always enough. There's always someone waiting for a seat, ready to jump in. Whether or not Yuki can hold on to his place in the Red Bull system remains to be seen. But one thing's certain, unless the sport takes a hard look at how it handles penalties, more drivers could find themselves caught in the same trap. Racing is supposed to reward instinct, courage, and smart decisions. But when those same qualities get punished, something needs to change.